Turning to Brexit, last week the Secretary of State for exiting the European Union reached agreement with the European Commission negotiating team on large parts of the draft withdrawal agreement. This includes the reciprocal agreement on citizens' rights, the financial settlement, aspects of issues relating to Northern Ireland, such as the common travel area, and crucially the detailed terms of a time-limited implementation period running to the end of December 2020. I am today placing copies of the draft agreement in the House libraries, and I want to thank the Secretary of State and our negotiating team for all their work in getting us to this point. The Council welcomed the agreement reached, including the time that the implementation period will provide for governments, businesses and citizens on both sides to prepare for the new relationship we want to build. As I set out in my speech in Florence, it is not in our national interest to ask businesses to undertake two sets of changes. So it follows that during the implementation period, they should continue to trade on current terms. Whilst I recognise that not everyone will welcome continuation of current trading terms for another 21 months, such an implementation period has been widely welcomed by British business because it is necessary if we are to minimise uncertainty and deliver a smooth and successful Brexit. For all of us, the most important issue must be focusing on negotiating the right future relationship that will endure for years to come. And we are determined to use the implementation period to prepare properly for that future relationship, which is why it is essential that we have clarity about the terms of that relationship when we ask the House to agree the implementation period and the rest of the withdrawal agreement in the autumn. Mr. Speaker, there are of course some key questions that remain to be resolved on the withdrawal agreement, including the governance of the agreement and how our commitments to avoid a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland should be turned into legal text. As I have made clear, we remain committed to the agreement we reached in December in its entirety. This includes a commitment to agree operational legal text for the backstop option set out in the joint report, although it remains my firm belief that we can and will find the best solutions for Northern Ireland as part of the overall future relationship between the UK and the EU. I have explained that the specific European Commission proposals for that backstop were unacceptable because they were not in line with the Belfast Agreement and threatened the break-up of the UK's internal market. And as such, they were not a fair reflection of the joint report. But there are many issues on which we can agree with the Commission, and we are committed to working intensively to resolve those which remain outstanding. So I welcome that we are beginning a dedicated set of talks today with the European Commission and, where appropriate, the Irish Government, so that we can work together to agree the best way to fulfil the commitments we have made. We have also been working closely with the Government of Gibraltar to ensure that Gibraltar is covered by our EU negotiations on withdrawal, the implementation period and future relationship. I am pleased that the draft agreement published jointly last week correctly applies to Gibraltar, but we will continue to engage closely with the Government of Gibraltar and our European partners to resolve the particular challenges our EU withdrawal poses for Gibraltar and for Spain. Mr. Speaker, following my speeches in Munich and at the Mansion House, setting out the future security and economic partnerships we want to develop, the Council also agreed guidelines for the next stage of the negotiations on this future relationship, which must rightly now be our focus. While there are, of course, some clear differences between our initial positions, the guidelines are a useful starting point for the negotiations that will now get underway. And I welcome the Council restating the EU's determination to have as close as possible a partnership with the UK and its desire for a balanced, ambitious and wide-ranging free trade agreement. For I believe there is now an opportunity to create a new dynamic in these negotiations. The agreements our negotiations have reached on the withdrawal agreement and the implementation period are proof that with political will and with a spirit of cooperation and a spirit of opportunity for the future, we can find answers to difficult issues together, and we must continue to do so. For whether people voted leave or remain, many are frankly tired of the old arguments and the attempts to refight the referendum over the past year. With a year to go, people are coming back together and looking forward. They want us to get on with it, and that's what we're going to do, and I commend this statement to the House.